Yes.
So I'm here with the amazing Alan of Salisbury. He's making a face right now, but that's okay. And we will start to talk about how to become a presenter, because it is kind of part of the topic. My topic is uh, finding a positive focal point for the truth movement. My website is solution.com, SOLOOSHION. But first of all, I'm just starting to become a presenter, and I'm asking very experienced presenters, how do they do it? And Alan has some unique tips on that. And after we conclude this interview, he will tell us a lot about psychopathy and narcissism. But first of all, Alan, welcome. Thank you very much about doing this interview. And maybe you want to start by introducing yourself and your work, your website perhaps, and also maybe start by telling what happened, that you were, just a bloke, and now you are a presenter. Is that the right word? I'm sorry, my English. But what happened between then and now, and maybe what difficulties did you overcome, and then we can start after that about the tech and all of that.
Okay, so let's start with the tech, basically.
Oh, okay.
I've got this is a little zoom camera. It's quite an old one, these, but they're all really good and they all really work well. And you don't really have to have a very expensive mic, because the main tip is, if you can close mic, you can see I've got this mic here, the closer it is to the sound source, the less it's going to be interrupted by other sounds that are going around. And also on this machine here, you've got an automatic level here. I prefer not to use that, although sometimes it can be quite handy if you've got one sound source. But I tend to, in an environment like this, get my volume level correct and then just let it run naturally, so it's got a much more dynamic sound. Well, I started really doing the videos and the talks, I guess, during the lockdown thing, when my social life kind of went in really big. Where everybody's supposed to be locked down, I'm being invited out to do talks with all these groups and stuff like that. So the talks I was doing were basically on the difference between law and legal. And I didn't repeat myself there when I said law, because law is L-O-R-E, or Lima Oscar Romeo Echo, and L-A-W, which is law. Phonetically they sound the same, but they're extremely different. But that's what I was doing the talks on, because most people are ignorant of what L-O-R-E, law, is, and how different it is from L-A-W. For example, L-O-R-E is divine, universal, natural, and the law common to all life, whereas L-A-W is just land, air and water. It's an invention of the Roman Church. And then from that we go even further downhill, or in a lower vibrational journey, towards what's known as legal. Legal was defined in 1893 by the Encyclopedia Britannica as being the undoing of God's law. So we've kind of descended a lot in order to do that. But that was what I was doing the talks on to start off with. And preceding that, I'm a pilot. I made videos about my flying escapades. And before that, I was a musician, which is why I know a bit about sound engineering. I also worked as a therapist in rehabilitation centres, treating people for addiction. And that's my clinical background, and I've got clinical qualifications for that. And that was basically the last kind of proper job I had before I kind of retired, really. I'm in my first year of retirement, which is quite an interesting thing, because they kind of pushed the retirement age up further and further away. And I was thinking the other day about that, in the same way that I remember a few years ago I would go into a department store, and I'd want to buy the old-fashioned light bulbs, you know, the ones with the filament in there, because I prefer the quality of light. In those days, I was ignorant to the dangers of LED lights and all the other stuff, but that's what I wanted to buy. And there were nothing on the shelf. They'd all disappeared, and I went into a number of shops, and why have they all disappeared? And as it would happen, that the government passed legislation not for corporations not to sell them, to only sell or make available the LED lights. And of course, I pondered this for a while. I thought, well, why would they do that? Well, of course, the LED bulbs use far less electricity than the old filament bulbs. But there's an agenda going on here. So if you looked at, I guess, in terms of energy, the government was saving loads and loads of energy by making it so people could only use LED bulbs. They're on cars now, and they had all this lighting. And why would they need to do that? Well, they needed to free up lots of extra energy for electric cars. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had it. So there's these agendas like that going on in the background. And then I thought to myself, well, hold on a minute. They're pushing the pension age. So if we look at money as being energy, they're kind of pushing our retirement age further and further away so we can get a pension. What are they doing with all that extra money? Because with the electricity, they used it to power the electric cars. And then the other thing that came up to me was, obviously, they're using that to finance immigration, aren't they? To put all the illegal immigrants, remember what I said about illegal being the undoing of God's law, it's not lawful, and that would finance it. So that would all the benefits they're getting, everything like that, all the people's pensions from those few years ago then go towards that. And that kind of made sense to me, and nobody's been able to convince me that that isn't the case. I'd like someone to, but that's the way you kind of juggle with money, and money is energy, and that's the way you kind of juggle with energy. And it kind of made sense to me, and it seemed quite obvious. Where are they getting all that extra money from to put in this country all the illegals in nice plush hotels and give them benefits and first refusal on lots of council houses and stuff like that? Whereas the native population, they're having to work far more because they can't retire until 67, when it used to be, when I first started work, 60. So that's 7 years, and that kind of sinks in quite nice with the immigration policy. But there you go, it's just my idea, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's basically the tech stuff and kind of the way I work in terms of the research I do.
Oh, thank you very much. I also curious for people who want to start presenting. Have you done anything to market yourself or brand yourself to make yourself better known? Or is it just all going downhill and you're just getting invitations all the time?
Right, well in this case I'm really not the person to ask that, because I've never been into selling myself, really. I was on a site last night and it was about these guys being druids and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm into, as I said, law, Lima, Oscar, Romeo, Echo, and I'm also into sovereignty. And basically, the bottom line is that originally, all of this was ours. We inherit it when we're being born. We're all sovereigns, and we're all equal under law, L-O-R-E. So this is all our stuff to start off with. So the question should be is, how have we been tricked into going out and selling ourselves for something that was already ours? That's the real question that nobody seems to ask. That they don't ask. I mean, the amount of economists I see who are of this ridiculous belief that the centralized banking system print money out of thin air. Anybody who knows bankers knows they don't do anything for nothing. They have to have something, some form of collateral. The whole idea is to be able to seize something of real value, because you end up owing something that has no real value at all. And that's a fiat currency. Fiat means authority. It's not real money, because even if you go into the legal system, legal, the definition of money is it's weighted metal. So it exists as a fact, as a 3-4 dimensional fact. Anything that's a fact in 3-4 dimensional has to, you have to be able to measure the length, breadth, width, and weight of a thing, right? That makes it a fact, and if it exists as a fact, then it exists in a linear time dimension. So that's 3-4 dimensional reality. So it's a fact. So coins or weighted metal, they're a fact. Paper money is a promise. And then as for digital money, well, you go right out the window there. But over the generations, they've got us to believe, to take something that's a fact and got us to believe in a fiction. And something that represents a fiction, which of course is a kind of insanity, really, but that's what we're going through. I mean, there was a thing called the Bills of Exchange Act in this country, and what happened in this country generally happens everywhere else. I think it's the Bills of Exchange Act 1883 or something like that, which was when they wanted people to get into the paper money. So to force them into it, because they always do it in the classic narcissistic way, which is what we're going to be talking about later, they do it sideways. They come out sideways. It won't be in your face, because narcissists are cowards. Okay, they are real cowards, so they'll avoid anything unless they've got some kind of advantage or something over you. So what they did is everybody had the coins money and all that kind of stuff, and people didn't have that much. And anybody who was really wealthy, well, the banks did a special deal for them. So there was this like two-tier system, there always has been. But what they did was they wanted to take, they wanted to introduce what's called legal tender. All right, now legal tender isn't money. Money, as I said, is weighted metal. Promissory notes are what's called legal tender. So they're not lawful, right? But they're legal. So remember, we started off with LORE, then that was reduced to LAW, land, air and water. And it's basically water, which is maritime law, which then became legal. So everything's getting watered down, and each generation just gets used to it and they adapt to it, just like they deal with the mobile phones and all that. But so they needed to force people to use this paper money, because if I wanted to go into a shop and buy a bicycle, a Victorian bicycle, they were very popular in those days, and I had my legal tender, and the guy that was selling me the bike said he didn't want to accept the paper, he wanted the coins. Then I could call a constable, because under the Bills of Exchange Act, as it still is now, payment offered with legal tender and payment refused is payment made. So if I offered him the legal tender for that bike and he said, I'm not taking the legal tender, then that bike is mine. Okay? That's legal. And I could call a constable or a policy enforcement officer, and those are two different things, to enforce that legal legislation. Well, of course, the guy who was selling me the bike would go, no, I don't want that. So what he would do is he'd take the promissory notes, and then he could go to the bank, and then when he's at the bank, he could then exchange it for the real money, the kind of weighted metal money. And that went on for a while, and then we ended up with I call them the International Usury Cartel, but they created a thing called the 1914-18, known as the Great War in this country, because they're brilliant ways at creating debt, and also they're brilliant ways at creating trauma. Trauma is essential when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder, creating that. Yeah, I think I'm on there, yeah? Okay,
Great. So that's a whole lot of very great information. My final question on the topic of how to become a presenter to you would be, is there something in general advice that you would give somebody who's just put all their courage together and wants to start presenting? What would you recommend them?
Right, well, presenting is kind of what I'm doing now. I'm talking to the camera and I'm being recorded, so you need to be able to do that naturally, and the best way to do that is to, whatever you're doing, is do it from the heart. Absolutely from the heart. That's it. You don't have any problem, and the best way you'll know you're doing it right when you feel a bit nervous before you do it. You don't have to show that you're nervous, but that shows that's a mark of integrity. When you're just reading your lines, you're not kind of engaged in that. But also you do need to write stuff down. If you're going to interview someone around a certain set of topics, it's a good idea to have a set of questions that are kind of in that ballpark, but you just kind of start with that question and just let them roll, because the important thing is, just like with any filmmaking, is it's what you've got in the can that counts. So it doesn't matter how much you've got to wade through, it's all useful until you edit it out. If you try and edit it while you're going, then the chances are you'll cut out something that you would have needed later. And the only time this generally happens is when you've got limited memory or a limited memory card on that, and you have to end up cutting stuff in order to get what you want, and that's very frustrating. So it's quite a hard lesson to learn that. So just keep the cameras rolling, the sound rolling, and you can all sort it out later in the edit. You know, that's basically what I would do.
Okay, great. Actually, you just told also some stuff about editing. Can you please repeat it? How you do it with the clap and the sound and all of that?
Yeah, well,
and how you do the audio?
Yeah, well, I am believe it or not, a qualified sound engineer. But I tend to use, say, for example, on my website, which is alanofsalisbury.com.
Yes.
There are 3 sections in there. One is on the law, and one is on aviation. I'm a pilot, and that's the most challenging environment to record on, because generally there's this, what I call it, a 4-second rule. When you're using video, 4 seconds on each subject, and then change the camera angle. Keeps people watching. It's a subliminal thing. If you've only got the one camera, then unless what they're saying is really essential or what's going on is really powerful, then you need to cut to another angle. So when I'm flying, the problems I had is I put 4 cameras on the aircraft, so which is great, but then I've got to synchronize those 4 cameras in with each other, and plus one of the cameras is on me, and because of the noisy cockpit environment, I've got a close mic, what I'm saying, so I have to record that separately and then sync all of that in. So what you end up with in the video editing software, and I tend to go for video editing software.
Which software is your preferred one?
Well, I'm using one that's really old and out of date, because I'm using old and out of date laptops. The one I'm using is Sony Vegas. I think I paid 12 quid for the CD, you know, and you can probably download it, which is nothing, and it doesn't do, you know, most of the stuff. If you're a filmmaker and you want to get textures and all that, then, you know, something like Da Vinci is a big one. You need a powerful computer to do that, and it's going to give you all that cinematic stuff. But if you're just doing interviews and like documentaries, then you don't need all of that stuff. You need to make have what I call intuitive editing. So you basically have your, say, my 4 camera tracks with their audio, which I sync them all in, and then I've got my audio. That's 4.
Coincidentally, there's a fighter flying over. No, come on.
Well, the airport's just over there.
Oh, that's why I see all these planes.
So there's 2 of them. So that's the kind of thing you'd need to edit out. So you'd have all your 4 tracks on the video editing, and then something like that would happen. You'd have to cut all that section out and then start off from where you were before, in order to keep everything in sync. So I just go for like the Sony Vegas. That's what I use now, which is great for doing the audio editing. It's got some sound effects on there which are really good, because after you've got your sound down, it's good to use some limiting or compression, because then that kind of keeps everything more or less at the same level. And I just use the camera shots to, if I'm talking, to just do a bit of background. Every time the camera shot changes, I'll use the sound of that camera shot, but keep the vocal going over the top, so there's some kind of continuity with it. But as I said, with the flying, that was the most classic one, because you've got 4 different cameras and you're just trying to sync it into one subject, and you've got to get the noise environment down low so you can hear what people are saying. Other than that, I tend to, if I'm doing a talk, or I've got two cameras, run 2 cameras basically, a close-up and one that's a little bit further away, and then just do what I've got here, just the one mic, and use that as the audio, because you don't want to hear what's going on. And then when it comes to stuff like, if you're lucky, applause, then the video cameras will pick that up better than the close mic one, and so you can mix all that up. So those are the two environments. So outside like this, it's quite a simple setup, but as I said, with the aviation, you've got 4 cameras. But you know, the Sony Vegas, it does it all for me, really. It's cheap, it's cheerful. You can upgrade it because you want to mix stuff down. If it's just an audio, eventually you need it to go down to like an MP3, because then it's a lower, it's a smaller file to upload online or to send to emails. For example, an hour's talk would be probably about, you get that down to 20 megabytes or something like that. If it's longer, then you'll need to cut the files in half and do them 2 speeds if you're doing it on Proton Mail, which will give you a max of about 20 megabytes. Google, Gmail, they only give you 10, so you've got to do it even more. So Proton Mail is why I use Proton Mail, and because they give you a bit more.
But they're Swiss, huh?
Yeah. They give you a bit more bandwidth.
Okay.
Of course, if you upgrade and pay, then they'll give you even more. But 20 megabytes is good for an hour's interview, which is generally what most things are going to be, or even half an hour, or even less. So that would do, and you can just send those files off to wherever.
But will
they need
the other
to go.
one be able to receive 20 megabytes if they have a Gmail?
No, that's the problem.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
so you
it.
need the other one to have Proton Mail as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
You know.
Well, great.
So that for what you need, that's probably most of it. And I would say, instead of using your phone, I'd get something like a DGM camera. I used to use the GoPros. GoPros were really good. They still are good, you know, but they've got more techy as they go, and ridiculously large files, because they want a, you know, absolute pristine thing. But mostly, if you're doing stuff online, 720 is fine, you know, in terms of the resolution. You don't need any more on that for most people watching things on laptops and stuff. So it's about keeping the files small. If you're going to make a cinematic production, then yeah, sure, it's great. But for what you need, and also like the little DGMs, they're really good. You can walk with them, and it's a very smooth thing. It doesn't shake about, which you won't get with your mobile phones. They're smaller than the phones. The sound quality's good. And if you sort of use one with one of these, then you can get a really good sounding thing together without there being, yeah, that's a zoom.
So, wait here. I'm getting too close.
Yeah, it's on, yeah, because the thing is that that's a Zoom H1. They make much better ones than that now, but this one has served me for years. That's what I mean. It's a standard bit of kit, industry bit of kit. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It still works great. So just that, and a DJM or GoPro, whatever you've got, a selfie stick, or some kind of tripod that can be useful, like something like this, you know, a normal camera thing that's telescopic, and then you can got all of that kit will easily go in that handbag you've got there. They easily go in a pocket, and it means you're really mobile then, and you can do your interviews then like that. So that's how I would do it, basically. Well, that's how I do it.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, some great new ideas that I will certainly be trying. So I hope you enjoyed this, and please, if you are considering becoming a presenter, just get started. That's the advice that I'm getting all the time. So just do it, and then build your quality up as you go. Okay, see you on the next video. Bye bye.